But we begin with Tony Romo, the LeBron James of football. You heard me. People may criticize Tony Romo now, but after he wins his Super Bowl or his Super Bowls, they will be recognizing his Jamesian greatness. Don't look at me like that. This isn't my idea. In fact, I think it's insane, asinine, ignorant of context, and laugh out loud funny. Of course it is. It comes from the Cowboys themselves, from Stephen Jones, Executive Vice President. In Dallas, Executive Vice President means son of owner.
Completely understand. Here in Dallas, there's a high bar when you look at some of the quarterbacks that we've had here and the championships that they've won.
Yes, let's look at some of the championships they've won. Let's go back to the last century and look at some of the championships they've won. Because you can point to the new stadium and the profit margins and the TV commercials and the bling and the glitz, but you have to go back to 1995 to find the last time the Cowboys under the Jones family did what they were supposed to do, win something. We rejoin Stephen Jones on Romo. He's getting to the LeBron part, already in progress.
I think Tony would be the first to tell you that he's disappointed that the success in the postseason and winning a Super Bowl hadn't been better. But I think in due time he'll get his justice, his day in court. And when he does lead us to a Super Bowl, which I do think will happen, then I think all the doubters will go by the wayside.
Wait, you think he's going to win a Super Bowl? With whom? The Cowboys aren't winning a Super Bowl. They've beaten the Giants, the Eagles, and Washington this year, and the Rams. They've held their own with the Broncos and the Chiefs, but they got the snot beaten out of them by San Diego. Wins over the Giants, Eagles, and Washington this year shouldn't count. There's a good tight end, an upper mid-level receiver, and about three-quarters of a running back, and Tony Romo. But fortunately, Tony Romo is LeBron James.
You look at just the history of athletes in general, whether it's a LeBron James or anybody, there's a lot of criticism until you put those championship rings on their fingers.
Well, great. You're going to put those championship rings on Tony Romo's fingers, which is nice. But you do know that eventually he will have to give them back to the Manning brothers, right? And about LeBron James. LeBron James was 27 years old when he won his championship, his first championship. Tony Romo is already 33. If the Cowboys have a fantastic draft next spring and do the greatest job ever of signing non-drafteds and coaxing greatness out of other teams' discards, maybe they win Super Bowl XLIX. By which time Tony Romo is 2.5 months shy of his 35th birthday, or maybe he's already out of the league by then.
But if you look at how he's performed year in and year out, saw some very interesting statistics on him after the first 100 games, and I think he ranks with just about anybody in terms of his first 100 NFL football games.
My God, since January 17, 2010, when he lost the third and last of the 4 playoff games he's ever been in, Tony Romo's one-loss record is 21 and 24. Exactly what first 100 games stats is Stephen Jones talking about? Oh, through 100 starts, the most completions, even more than Kurt Warner. And Manning. Of course, Manning wasn't 33 when he hit 100 starts. He was 28. Ooh, most passing yards, too. Even more than Warner and more than Dan Marino. Marino, who again wasn't an aging veteran of 33 like Romo, who was 28. And third in most TDs. Just 25 behind Marino, but only 5 behind Favre. Favre, who also wasn't 23, who had just turned 29 2 weeks earlier. Romo has had 7 full seasons as the Cowboys quarterback behind him now. You know who FootballReference.com pulls up as his nearest comps through year 7? To quote them, the players whose careers were of similar quality and shape? Milt, Plum, and Aaron Brooks. Milt Plum, the guy who quarterbacked the Browns when Jim Brown was in his prime, and he got them into just one playoff game in which they were shut out. And he came in relief in another playoff game in which they lost 59-14. Milt Plum, considered the 686th greatest player in NFL history. That's Tony Romo's historical match. Not LeBron James, Milt Plum.
I think Tony will get his, and when he does, I think history is going to look upon him, look at his career, and say that, hey, he was one hell of a quarterback.
Frankly, I think Tony Romo already got his. He had to play for underachieving ownership. And this raises a bigger point, this whole Stephen Jones hallucination about the quality of Tony Romo. It began when the host asked him about people who criticized Tony Romo.
You just wonder if they really know what they're talking about.
Great. You do that. Meanwhile, the rest of us will just wonder if you and your father really know what you're talking about. Jerry Jones agreed with Stephen Jones. Yes, he said, I think that at least all precedents I've seen, there was a lot more criticism before certain quarterbacks won a Super Bowl than when after they won one. That's always been the precedent. I got your precedent right here. The Dallas Cowboys have set the precedent for being the most underachieving franchise in professional sports for the last 18 years. 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, and then 2-4 in wild cards and 0-3 in divisionals. And by the way, who gets credit for those Super Bowls? I mean, I know Jerry Jones thinks he deserves a statue for that inside his stadium, as big as the scoreboard, maybe at midfield. And I'll say it right here. He fired Tom Landry and hired Jimmy Johnson, and everybody was appalled, and he was right, and we were wrong. But Jimmy Johnson drafted Troy Aikman, and Jimmy Johnson traded Herschel Walker for players and 6 draft choices, 2 of whom turned into Emmitt Smith and Darren Woodson. And then if there's a statue of anybody going up in the Cowboys Megaplex Stadium, it's of Jimmy Johnson, not Jerry Jones. They can put it up right there next to the statue of Tony Romo. I'm not saying they should build a statue of Tony Romo. I'm not saying that they need to build a statue of Tony Romo. I'm saying that for all he and Dallas have accomplished, Tony Romo is the statue of Tony Romo.